The release of the Canon EOS C80 has probably taken you a bit by surprise, especially considering this is already the fourth model Canon has launched in just over 2 months. Previously, the C400 took up the banner for Cinema EOS, once again going head-to-head with Sony's Cinema line. Then there was the R1R Mark II, allowing the 1 Series and 5 Series models to continue their legendary legacy in the EOS R era. So at this very moment, if we look back at this boxy C80, what kind of mission does its arrival carry? Even today, when we look back at the C70 camera, people still often mention its rather distinctive exterior design with a wry smile. While most cameras have become slimmer and longer, Canon uniquely chose to go in a more horizontal direction. So if you're a fan of a more slender aesthetic, you can only really blame the EDC released back in 2012. The brand new Canon C80, which inherits the blocky design of the original series, actually shares an almost identical exterior design with the C70. When you first see it, the most obvious difference is the addition of this SDI port on the top left side of the body. This is a 12G SDI that can output 4K footage, and its relatively high position means that when we mount it in a small rig, it doesn't interfere too much with our use of the function buttons on the left side of the body. Don't underestimate this SDI. If you consider it together with the BNC timecode decoding interface on the front, the C80's port design is actually already comprehensive enough. This also demonstrates an improvement in the C80's level of professionalism. Apart from that, while maintaining the same optical axis as the rest of the Cinema EOS range, the C80 has raised the height of the viewfinder housing. Previously, the C70 had a cold shoe, but on the C80 this has been upgraded to a multifunctional digital hot shoe, and a front-facing 1/4-inch screw hole with a horizontal locking slot has been added. This screw hole is now mainly used for attaching the original manufacturer's top handle. The addition of the hot shoe, on the other hand, mainly provides us with digital audio functionality. So looking at it in its current form, when we use a digital audio microphone, it might not be possible to use the original top handle at the same time. And vice versa, the two components will interfere with each other. Canon's solution is a digital audio extension interface, which we mount on top of the handle. To me though, this doesn't seem particularly elegant. I would definitely prefer to run the wiring directly inside the handle to solve the issue. Given the current situation, this particular need will likely have to be addressed by third-party accessory manufacturers. On the back of the camera body, if you look closely, you'll notice that Canon has made some changes to the multi-function buttons 7 and 8, which are controlled by the thumb, as well as the position and shape of the joystick on the C80. The joystick itself now resembles that of the R5 Mark II more closely. It's sturdier, feels better in the hand, and is positioned more sensibly. As we mentioned in our coverage of the C70, Canon could have added another shortcut button just below the joystick on the current C80. Unfortunately, that's still not the case this time around. Now, regarding the screen area on the left side of the C80, Canon has stated that they've improved the hinge mechanism of the C80 screen, so it won't become loose over time like the C70s did. However, I haven't actually used the C70 for an extended period myself, so I can't say I have a particularly strong impression of this issue. However, when you look at the C80's screen in its closed position, you can feel that there's a locator at the bottom. This locator is a brand new addition, and when you flip in or closing the screen, the whole thing feels much more secure. This is a difference you can clearly notice. As for the battery compartment below, apart from the addition of a network port, it's pretty much the same as the C70. There's not much difference. This time, the standard battery for the C80 is the same as the one in the C400. It's the BPA30N battery with the N marking. But in fact, for the C80, using the older A30 or A60 batteries doesn't affect any of its functions at all. Now, on the bottom of the entire body, Canon has finally changed something on the C70 that people have been complaining about for ages: the screw hole positions. They've added a 1/4 inch screw hole in front of the original 3/8 inch central screw. This, for Canon's Cinema EOS range, really can be called an epic update. Something quite interesting about the overall weight of the machine is that if we only look at the bare body specifications, you might not really notice much of a weight difference between the C80 and the C400. However, for the C400, the bare body isn't particularly usable on its own. Once you add the top handle, screen and grip, the weight difference becomes much more apparent. That said, the C80 does feel rather hefty in the hand as well. When you're holding just the bare body, the centre of gravity is towards the back, so you can feel it leaning that way. It's only after attaching a lens that the balance feels a bit more even. As for storage media, the C80 and C70 are exactly the same, still using SD cards. On the face of it, this seems like a good thing financially, but in reality, it's not entirely positive. Canon C80 is equipped with the same CMOS sensor as the C400, so it can also support internal recording of 6K cinema raw light, that is raw footage, as well as standard 4K video shooting. What's more, we still have triple native ISO, which has also been carried down. We've already covered all of this in our content on the C400. However, as you can see from the recording specifications, the C80 doesn't offer us internal recording of 6K RAW above 30 frames per second, and in full frame mode the RAW quality is Lieutenant. To be honest, whether the RAW quality is QST or LT isn't particularly important to me, because the fact that full frame RAW recording tops out at 30 frames per second is actually a bit of a shame for the RAW functionality. It means we can't really do any slow motion work or anything like that. However, Canon has still provided us with the possibility of 60 frames per second. The C80 supports HDMI output of raw signals, and this signal supports up to 6K at 60 frames per second. Here we can use the Atomos Ninja to record 6K 60 frames per second ProRes RAW externally. However, at present, Atomos recorders do not yet support capturing this signal, but in the future, Atomos will quickly work to make this feature compatible. In this mode, internal recording can be directly disabled, so as long as you are happy to work with the ProRes RAW workflow and don't need internal recording, the combined price of the C80 and Atomos Ninja is still lower than that of the C400. If you can accept this, I think it's a viable solution. This also represents a brand new significance for external recorders in the new era. When the C70 was first released, it was actually a camera that only supported 4K 120 frames per second interframe encoded video recording. It wasn't until 2 years later that Canon, through a firmware update, enabled the C70 to record 4K 60 frames per second cinema raw light internally. So we can say that it was only at that point that the C70 truly gained its core competitive edge. Now, looking at the C80, in fact, we already know that from a hardware perspective, it is capable of recording 6K at 60 frames per second. At least at the CMOS level, that's certainly not an issue. So perhaps we can look forward to a firmware update that might add these features as well, can't we? Now, if we set aside the overall product line positioning for the moment, at this point, this particular requirement actually makes the SD card a significant obstacle that the C80 finds very difficult to overcome. In terms of overall system use, I actually think the menu is essentially a matter of habit, but what we can feel is that if we bring up the menu to make some adjustments to the functions, after finishing the adjustments, you have to press the menu button again to return to the viewfinder shooting interface. However, there isn't a design like on the R series where you can simply half press the shutter to exit. So we just set the number 10 custom button next to the shutter as the menu button. No matter what adjustments you need to make, our hands are always in a position to firmly grip the camera body. Now, buttons 10 and 11 are actually the only two out of a C80's total of 13 custom buttons that don't have any original function assigned to them. Of course, as for button 7 or some of the other buttons, I actually think some of them aren't particularly meaningful in terms of functionality. Our usual practice is to reassign button 7 to act as a pseudo shutter trigger. Since the C80 and C400 have a fairly high degree of performance overlap, their performance, particularly in terms of dynamic range, is almost identical. When recording in RAW, we need to carry out more noise control in post-production. However, when we opt for the more commonly used non-RAW codecs, thanks to the 6K oversampling that produces a 4K image and the camera's enhanced in-body noise control, our dynamic range figures can reach a measured value of 16.5, an SR of 14.8, and an SR of 23.6. At the same time, in terms of highlight recovery and shadow noise performance, the C80 actually maintains a high level of consistency with the C400. The highlight recovery performance between +5 and +6 stops is about average for Japanese manufacturers at present, and much like the R5 Mark II, when comparing the C80 to the C70, you can sense an improvement in color science. The overall red cast is more restrained, and the overall color style still leans more towards neutrality. As for highlight recovery from slight overexposure, it's much the same as when we compare the C300 Mark III with the C400. When pulling back highlights on the C80, you can see that color retention is much better than on the C70, which is a characteristic of the DGO sensor. However, looking at it from the perspective of noise performance, you'll notice that the C70, thanks to the DGO sensor, produces finer grain. In terms of low light performance, at base ISO 800, you'll find that the C70 with a DGO sensor is indeed likely to be cleaner than the C80. This is also a core advantage of DGM. Now, this advantage, maintained by the C70, continues all the way until the C80 is at base to ISO 3200. It's not until ISO 12800 that the C70 starts to show a relatively obvious disadvantage. However, if we look at the C80's own comparison, we can indeed sense how it manages to control noise from base to ISO 3200 and under 12800, so the triple native ISO function really does prove to be quite practical. So if you are really concerned about the noise levels in the darker areas of the image, we can actually offer you a solution here. Provided your exposure is correct, you can use ISO 800 under the base to ISO 3200 setting, or ISO 3200 under the base to ISO 12800 setting. At this point, the noise levels can be suppressed even better, because this is essentially an EI mode, where the overall exposure follows a to the right strategy. One thing to pay special attention to here is that from 800 to 3200 and from 3200 to 12800, both are exactly 2 stops apart. When shooting in this way, our highlight latitude will also lose 2 stops. As for whether losing these 2 stops will affect our highlight details, just make sure there is no highlight clipping. At this point, you can use the waveform function on the C80 to check. As long as the top of the waveform isn't clipped, you can use it with confidence. So whether it's in terms of dynamic range performance, latitude, or low noise capability, you'll find that the C80 can't really be considered a direct update or successor to the C70. It's more like a compact camera in the Cinema ER series, expanding the product line by increasing the sensor size. So from this perspective, if you're particularly concerned about recording RAW at 50 to 60 frames per second, and you're very fond of the performance of a DGO sensor, then the S35 format won't pose any issues for you at all. In fact, the performance advantages of the C70 still remain. As long as you are clear enough about your own needs, I believe the C80 and C70 cameras don't really compete with each other directly. And what about image quality? Well, the C80's 4K footage is directly oversampled from 6K, so the sharpness is certainly plain to see. It is indeed noticeably clearer than native 4K footage. But what you absolutely need to know here is that this oversampled 4K can only be achieved at frame rates below 60 frames per second. At 120 or 100 frames per second, it actually reverts to the more common pixel binning mode. However, looking at the footage, even though the 100 frames per second image isn't as sharp as the oversampled 4K, I honestly don't think there's any obvious blurring or jagged edges. In fact, the difference in visual experience is hardly noticeable during final playback. You can pretty much treat it as a near pixel-to-pixel performance. One extra point to add here is that the autofocus capability of the C80 is identical to that of the C400. The tracking performance and working area are exactly the same, and both are excellent. And it's worth mentioning in particular that the C80 also enables autofocus when shooting at 4K 120 frames per second, which is, to be fair, only to be expected. However, as we mentioned with the C400, at the time it wasn't possible to use autofocus above 60 frames per second, but we've since heard from Canon that a firmware update for the C400 is coming very soon. So, if you're not one of the first batch of users, it's quite likely that by the time you get your hands on the camera, it'll already be ready to offer autofocus and automatic subject recognition at 120 frames per second. This more or less resolves what was previously the most disappointing issue with the C400 camera. As we mentioned in our recent episode on the R Mark II, Canon's false color function can't be used alongside monitoring aids on the R Mark II. However, this isn't an issue on the Cinema EOS product line. We can activate the false color function on the C80 at any time without any problem. The allocation and use of these professional features is precisely what distinguishes the Cinema EOS line from the EOS line, two very different product ranges. As we've always noticed, the difference between Canon and Sony lies in the fact that Canon prefers to distinguish between higher and lower end products by the recording capabilities of the camera body itself, whereas Sony tends to make these distinctions more through external features, such as the types of ports and similar configurations. It's actually hard to say which of these two approaches is right or wrong. Take the FX6 and FX3 for example. These two cameras deliver the same image quality. There's no situation where one can shoot something the other can't. The differences only come into play with things like built-in ND filters, SDI ports, the overall body design, battery life and so on. As for the C400 and C80, Canon's approach has been to retain as many external features as possible, such as built-in ND filters, SDI ports and batteries. All of these have been preserved and carried over directly from the C400 to the C80. So what's missing? What's missing are things like internal recording at 6K at 60 frames per second in RAW, as well as the compression quality of RAW and other recording specifications. These differences will, in many cases, influence users and their requirements when choosing between these two models. In fact, the way this is differentiated from Sony is in two completely different directions, but there's really no better or worse between them, okay? In the end, there actually isn't much for us to discuss in this episode. After all, even if we hadn't made this program, you probably already know enough about this camera. For me, the greatest significance of the C80 is that it allows more users to experience the core triple base ISO feature found on the C400, and Canon has comprehensively brought the most commonly used 4K footage up to a super sampled standard. In terms of positioning, the C80 is more like a product that sits between Sony's FX6 and FX3. With the C70, C80 and C400, Cinema EOS has also established a product line similar to Sony's Cinema line, ranging from the FX30 to the FX3 and then to the FX6. From a needs perspective, if you're already a Cinema EOS camera user, whether you're looking to upgrade from the Super 35 format C70, add a full-frame C80, or update from an EF mount C300 or C500 to the latest RF mount, the C80 is a more affordable choice that stands in front of the C400. But to truly clear all obstacles, Canon may still need to break down the final barrier with its users, which is the complete opening up of the RF mount. I believe that day isn't too far off. So, looking at the overall performance of the current products, would you consider coming back home? Alright, that's all for this episode. If you found it helpful, don't forget to give us a like, comment and follow. See you next time.